Bowling is a fun and exciting sport that, according to bowlingmuseum.com, is played by 95 million people in 90 different countries. I've been in the bowling industry for 10 years now, having gone to school in 2012 for the pin setter maintenance, where I received this nice manual that has no date. I primarily just used the troubleshooting section anyways. And then in 2014, I went to ball drilling school. The pin setters, the Brunswick A2s, were developed in 1945, right after World War II, where Brunswick brought in the Otis Elevator Company to help them design an automatic pin setter. Prior to World War II, in the 1920s, AMF tried coming out with an automatic pin setter. They were trying to design the machine, the 8230. Brunswick also trying to come up with their own. They came out with a B machine that really didn't facilitate the pin setter the automatic way. Before that, they had the Walls for 1920s, the late 1800s. The Walls were higher. They had pin buoys. So when the bowler would throw their ball down, hit the pins, they'd fall into the pit. Pin buoy would be sitting up on a little seat. He'd have to jump down, set the pins up real quick, grab the ball, roll it back, and get out of there, because if the next bowler was ready, they were just bowling. They weren't waiting for pin buoys. So the proprietors were getting tired of pin buoys not wanting to work, getting hit, getting hurt. They came up with a pedal on the back of the pin deck that made it a little easier. They would just step on the pedal, little spikes would come up. Then on the bottom of bowling pins, there's a little hole. They could just set it on there, made it a little quicker for them, get their foot off, and get out of there. The bowling pin is actually 15 inches tall and 15 inches around in the belly. That's the modern bowling pin, which is made out of wood on the core and plastic coated on the outside. Now the Brunswick A2 is set up to where when the bowling ball comes down, hits the pins come back, they hit a curtain, which then trips the curtain rod, which causes the rake to drop. Rake comes, sweeps any dead pins that are lying down, while the deck comes, and any pins that are still standing, they have scissors that grab it, lift it off, the rake goes, puts the pins back, which then goes into the pin elevator, which brings it up into a turnaround pan, turns it around, make sure that the pins go up the proper way. The bottom first goes into a turret, which then turns, drops the pins in the boots, continues the cycle. After the second ball goes, rake sweeps everything that's left. The deck comes down, shifts back, sets the pins back down, gets out of the way, gets it ready. Now after the ball goes through, it goes onto a ball wheel elevator, which then goes the opposite way of the pins, so that it goes down the track into an accelerator motor, shoots it back forward, whereas the pin buoys, they had the track was above ground, put the ball on there, and just the force of the ball rolling. Now with balls the way that they are, the oil they absorb, you have to have an accelerator to help them kick it out there and go up. These machines actually have a clutch drive, a transmission. They have a pin escalator that brings the pins up, and primarily have a lot of pulleys, cables, whereas the AMF machines went more to conveyor style, where you got to change out a lot of belts, wider belts. So it's been a lot of fun working on these. They're a little easier mechanically to work on than the AMF, which is more with the belts, tensioners, and having to get that done. The bowling, according to Don Russell's book Bowling Now, in his introduction, and the bowlingmuseum.com, bowling started back in 3200 BC, as far as they can tell. Archaeologists dug up in Egypt, and they found mummies actually buried with bowling pins. Back then, it was a 9-pin setup, and the lanes were made out of stone, the ball was made out of stone, the pins were all stone, and only the rich pharaohs, the richer Egyptians could afford to play the sport. No one's really sure what the scoring was. The bowling balls were smaller, only about 8 to 10 inches in circumference. The pins, shorter, thinner. Everything was made out of stone, though. In the 1800s, when bowling came to America, they still used the 9-pin setup, which made them look like a diamond. They started making the balls out of wood. The pins were made out of wood, and they came up with the 15 by 15 for the wood pins. Bowling balls went to 27 inches around. The wood lanes now are actually wood, and they're about this thick. Now, most bowling alleys in this late 2000s are going to a synthetic lane because there's less maintenance you have to do on them. They hold the oil better, which with the wood you have to condition with almost, it's like a vegetable oil you put on there. It's mineral oil, different things mixed in. With a laying machine, it comes down and cleans the wood. And with wood, it's easier to swell, shrink, get tracks in it. So they're all going more for the synthetics because wood you do have to sand down because you're going to get divots, other problems that you get. So you got to bring in a company, sand them all down, and then refinish them. In the late 1800s in Connecticut, they actually outlawed, made it illegal to bowl with 9 pins. That's when they came up with the 10-pin triangle pattern for bowling. And it's kind of crazy they made it illegal just to bowl with 9 pins. The bowling equipment is changed quite a bit in the times. All the way up in the early 1900s, they went to rubber balls, which is this rubber style. We still have some today. And the primarily you were conventional bowling. You'd have to so your whole fingers basically went in there up to your second knuckle. So that made it in order to turn the ball, you'd have to come back and then you release it off the side. They have full rollers that come off the side like a suitcase. And back then you could only go by your pin, and depending on where the pin was, that was your weight, where it rolled, where, you know, how it hooked. If it hooked backwards, left hook, right hook. And then in the 1990s, a company called Storm Bowling, they came out and they said, you know what, we could probably change this from rubber and switch to urethane. So they switched to a urethane ball, which just helped it pick up on the lane a little better for hook, I guess is the best way. And then a lot of people started doing the fingertip, where it's just the tips of your fingers inside. Today, in the 2000s, they went to these little inserts. Most bowling prior to that, they just drilled the hole for the size of your fingertip and went in there. That was it. And after the urethane, companies started going to reactive resin and different styles of bowling ball, staying with the 27-inch circumference. They have the Pearl, which is a shiny ball, which is made for more length on the lane and then turn it in the pocket. Then they have the Solid, which is a duller finish, which causes it to pick up earlier on the lane, not having so much length before it starts turning. And then the in-between, they have the hybrid cover stock, which is kind of your mid-ground. You know, it's not going to hook early, it's not going to hook late. It's in between, a little hybrid cover stock. It has both Pearl and Solid urethane reactive resin inside of that.